All right, let's get to it. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world right now. So Tucker Carlson, our good friend Tucker Carlson, everyone's wondering what in the world was he doing? What is he up to after his sudden and immediate departure from Fox News on Monday? Like, what the heck happened? He was getting ready to prepare for a show, and suddenly a message down from Rupert Murdoch or whatever is, we're done. And so a lot of people speculating as to what exactly happened. Well, Tucker came out and he didn't address specifically what happened, but did have a message. We can kind of like play it and talk a little bit about what this sort of corporate media message is. See if you can pick up some of the veiled commentary about corporate media, corporate press.
Okay, but if we're playing like Tucker Carlson bingo, like what are the reasons in which he left? I've sort of been a little bit consumed by it in the last couple of days.
Well, he's such a close friend too. It's
yes, because we know him, they're family friends. Also because, as Russell Brand pointed out, the media is kind of obsessed with itself. So it's been so incestuous that you can't, as soon as you like dip a toe into it, it feels like a black hole. You're sucked right in. But if we have this sort of like bingo card of hypotheses, it would be the Dominion lawsuit. It would be transgenderism. These are the things that people
Ukraine
are saying
war.
as reasons.
Right.
Calling out the CIA, the FBI, Julian Assange.
January
all of these things.
6th.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things on the bingo card. But my biggest hypothesis was that it was because he was anti-war. And that this was history repeating itself around the time when Phil Donahue was taken off the air as the marquee personality of another network.
Well,
so I just would like you to know, when we play this, what's the thing he mentions first? Is it something that I can say I told you so about?
All right,
I'm just going to put it out there.
Let's roll it.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
So a lot of people speculating, see you soon. So what will that mean exactly? We don't know. I'm sure he's taking some time, enjoying some downtime. But let's just unpack what he said there, right? I mean,
the first thing he lists is war. Some of the things that people are afraid of you having legitimate conversations about. He does say war. Now, I mean, is that enough for me to take a victory lap? No. But he mentions a bunch of different things and talks about how people are afraid of hearing them. So who is afraid of hearing them?
Well, the Pentagon. So the Politico released an article yesterday. I love, Politico, which of course is just a mouthpiece of the military-industrial complex and the intelligence state. Politico releases an article yesterday saying that the top brass at the Pentagon are pleased. The top brass at the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, are happy that Tucker was pushed out at Fox. Of course they are. To which Tucker responded, because Politico wanted a comment, and Tucker just responded via text to one of the Politico reporters and just said, "Ha, I bet." Exactly. So, of course he is, because he was very critical of Mark Milley. He's been very critical of how the military has been moving towards, is becoming ideological rather than an actual fighting force.
Yes. He's willing to say that Zelensky is trolling America for money. And, that's an unpopular opinion.
He's also been very critical, even going back to my time sitting on the couch with him and co-anchor. When he went to Iraq and he saw the horrors of seeing what happened to the soldiers and women specifically who were fighting in Iraq, he's like, no, moms, women should not be fighting on the front lines of these wars that these men are creating. It should not happen. It's disgusting, and it shows a military in decline. And you can say what you want about women fighting in wars and all that. If you agree with it, great. But his point was, no, we should not be doing that. If men are creating this, men should fight it. And all these women who were coming home maimed and just loss of limbs and just awful. So he's been very critical. He's been very critical of the wars. He's been very critical of these proxy wars. He's been very critical of why the hell are we spending $115 billion in Ukraine when our cities are on fire in the United States, when our borders are porous, when we can't, when our education system is crumbling, when we have poverty increasing, a no middle class at all. Why the hell are we spending this much on foreign wars? So of course the Pentagon is happy that he's not there anymore.
But who else can we read between the lines that is afraid to hear his narrative? Well, Fox News.
Right.
Which, we had sort of not been sure if it was someone inside of upper management or if, how far did that go? Was there a message they wanted to just
Silence.
Switch off?
Right.
He doesn't say as much, but him saying that powerful people are afraid, and then we know someone outside of him made this decision. Well, we can extrapolate.
We also can extrapolate too. Again, he's not being critical or saying anything negative about Fox, right? So clearly there was some sort of a mutual agreement of goodbye.
I think that's the opposite of what I just said.
Well, was he really critical of Fox? I mean, he was critical of corporate media. I mean, and so you could then extrapolate
that there are powers. His employment was with Fox News and it was taken from him. Yeah. And he's saying that there are powers that are afraid of him speaking. So it has to have been Fox. Yes, I'm sure he can't say anything. I'm sure that, the way these things work in media contracts, he most likely has a non-disparage clause and can't say anything.
And he's not and he's not usually that kind of person.
He wouldn't anyway. Yeah. He's not going full Don Lemon and let's sue the network.
Full Don Lemon.
That's now a thing.
So the Daily Mail though sent a reporter to Florida to his house to try to get him on camera and get him to say a few words, and he did. And he was gracious about it. So they kind of accosted him and had the cameras and filmed him leaving his house with his wife on their way to a dinner date on their golf cart. Because everyone in Florida drives golf carts, they don't really drive cars. All of my friends, it's true. All of my friends that live in Florida, they all live in communities where there's a gate or something where you can't drive out of it, and they all just drive golf carts. They all just go down to the pool and on a golf cart. Okay, that's the way they do it. Anyway, here's Tucker. It's a little quick clip. Watch. He's just laughing at the reporter standing there taking photos of him. He's just, anyway, there he goes. Okay. He's just laughing. And here's a
with this quintessential known chuckle.
Yeah. He's like, why are you, they're filming me? Okay. So he sort of shrugged off the media firestorm when he was sort of asked about this by the Daily Mail. And he said, I'm going out, for a date with my wife. And he said, look, retirement is going great so far, he said. And he says, I haven't eaten dinner with my wife on a weeknight in 7 years. because he has to do the show. So he doesn't get to have dinner with his wife and kids, and he's busy up and, it's showtime at 8 o'clock. So you're cramming with your producers and all of that. And he said, yeah, now I get appetizers plus the entree. But here's my favorite take on this whole thing today. I think this sums it up. If you want to hear from the deep state on this, someone who worked in the deep state, who left the deep state, who understands completely, an ex-U.S. Army PSYOPs expert says that Fox News fired Carlson to maintain a, quote, semi-lobotomized, quasi-retarded population.
What the heck?
And so what he said was, this is Bennett. This is former U.S. PSYOPs officer, who his name is Scott Bennett. He said that Tucker, quote, needed to be silenced because he represented too big a threat to the powers and principalities, institutions, and agendas that seek an unenlightened, uninformed, semi-lobotomized, quasi-retarded population that do not question, do not research, do not analyze, but simply digest and follow instructions. He says Tucker Carlson exposed the fraud and money laundering, racketeering crimes of FTX and the Democrat Party in Ukraine involving the United States government. He exposed the U.S. biochemical labs in Ukraine and their connection to the Democratic Party. President Barack Obama, Biden, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Bill Gates, and other U.S. government agencies and pharmaceutical companies, Scott Bennett told Sputnik News. But I love that Fox News fired Carlson to maintain a semi-lobotomized, quasi-retarded population. Unpack that a little bit. Think about that. What he's saying is that now that you took the rabble-rouser out of Fox, like anyone who's like flipping on Fox or flipping on MSNBC or CNN is getting basically garbage.
Yes.
Basically.
Who's left there? I mean, not that I watch a lot of Fox, but who is left there to speak for Julian Assange or to call bullshit on the Duma investigation in Syria?
No.
Who's there to look into biolabs in Sudan?
No one.
And the NIH influence there? Like,
no one.
Yeah, he would do those things, and everyone around him would act like they had blinders on. Like, that's nice. Now back to our regularly scheduled.
Oh, this 1 hour of news where he's actually covering something legitimate, like the Nord Stream bombing, right?
Yeah.
The Nord Stream pipeline, which basically most of the other, none of them really covered it in detail. Actually giving a platform to Seymour Hersh and covering that story. Nobody else. So you get that 1 hour of like sanity from like 8 to 9, and then you go back to the lobotomized, quasi-retarded population.
And then look, the piece he did, let's say with Russell Brand, where they call out the fact that, the left and the right media are the same. They're just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And so people who start to pull that thread, yes, wake up. And, I go back to the fact that in journalism school, you're taught to write to an 8th grade education. You're taught to write and broadcast, nothing above an 8th grade education. And most journalists kind of take that seriously and don't bother to reach any higher. Who does that help? Who is that helping anyone get smarter and more educated? Is this like fulfilling the public good of journalism as an ombudsman? I think most of us, like I used to have this colleague who would joke when we would like, what about this? What about this? And the joke was too smart for TV. Like,
yeah.
Nope, that's too smart for TV.
And so Tucker would tell me, he's like, he would think all day about like writing his opening monologue, his opening story, and he would really like give it a lot of thought. He'd like sit quietly and like really, and he's a writer by trade, so he would think and really like go through like putting this narrative together at the beginning of his show. And like you could always sort of count on that top part of his show to be thoughtful, educated, maybe funny, a little funny as well, but also well-informed and something you weren't going to see anywhere else. I love someone in the chat just said, I've now clicked the do not recommend button for Fox on YouTube now. I just don't do it. And it's true. Like, you go from like Tucker's show then to a warmonger right after that. You go to these other shows afterwards who are literally the polar opposite, who are like pushing for war in Ukraine, pushing for confrontation with Russia, putting on people on the air like Lindsey Graham and these buffoons, and just they're part of the corporate. They're part of the corporate problem. Yeah, really. So anyway, it's been amazing to watch.
Right. And it's been interesting to watch people sort of like just plant their flags around identity politics with Tucker as a platform.
Right.
as if it's like trans rights, gay rights, environmental rights, all of this stuff. And like where I stand on Tucker Carlson is immutable, because maybe you didn't like the way he characterized immigration, or maybe you didn't like the way, I don't know, he presents certain transgender issues, in which case people are unable to see what goes missing with this one voice, that maybe there's certain parts of it that you don't like. As if what that says to me is that like I can meld myself into any other cable news anchor that's unoffensive to me, right?
Right.
And I won't expect to be pushed or uncomfortable. And everyone else will just like, it will be a reflection of myself. It's almost like this sort of narcissistic cycle of like not being pushed in your paradigms in life.
Well, and that's what,
and I was gonna say it's so important too, because I mean, if you go back to like the, because I grew up with like the news anchors of the 80s, where you'd get like this really, like they wouldn't do investigative journalism, they would go after people, they would actually do their job. Yeah. And where you look at like the media now, it's like whether you agree with Tucker or not, losing voices of dissent against what the government does is so detrimental to us as a society, because once all those voices are gone, they can do whatever they want and they have no gatekeepers. Nobody is keeping an eye on it. Yeah. And so then it's left to like independent media to take that on and try as we might. We don't have the broadcast capability that they do. It's like we don't have that brand recognition yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So independent media is at a disadvantage in that. And so it is a serious win for sort of like that deep state to get rid of dissenting voices. Yeah. And so now, like you had said, who's left? Who's left to take on the military-industrial complex?
No one. They're not going to. And so, I mean, maybe someone will surprise us, but it would be suddenly like an about face.
Right.
Like suddenly, I mean, I'm not going to name any names because I don't watch anybody else. I don't watch anyone else, and there's no reason for me to watch anybody on that channel. Like the only person I would watch on that network was Tucker. Truth, and so because I don't know who else is going to take that on. It's not. No one else is going to take that on.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's going to be a fake. It's going to be like, wow, this person suddenly, I should say occasionally like Maria Bartiromo would do a really good job of like taking on topics that, wow, I can't believe, and so there's times when we've definitely featured Maria Bartiromo here on the show occasionally for different things. But,
yeah, way back in the day, I thought Jake Tapper would be like one of those voices, and that didn't last very long at all. So CNN's not going to step up, and because not even just Fox, like who anywhere on mainstream media is now voicing dissent.
Yeah. No one. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.